our region. I was practically the store manager, you know? Elena trusted me to take care of everything from sales to the boring paperwork, but it didn't bother me one bit. I adored every little minute I spent there. Every day was a different surprise. Sometimes I was negotiating with the local artisans, other times I was arranging the shelves so everything would be just right, and look, it's not to brag, but I had a special knack with the customers. I would just open my mouth to talk about a piece and they would be enchanted. I think it's because I truly loved every little thing we sold there. The Potosí crafts are something out of this world, you know? Our store was on a charming little street, one of those typical of San Luis Potosí, with narrow sidewalks and colonial mansions, you know? Those pink sandstone constructions with wrought iron balconies, you know? Yes, right there. Every day I would arrive early, open the windows, and let that lovely smell of wood and ceramics fill the street. The tourists loved it. They would spend hours snooping around every corner of the store, and I was always on top of everything, making sure nothing was out of place, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, you know? Sometimes I had to stay late at night, all alone in the store, organizing the inventory or doing the accounts. It was in those moments when I felt a chill down my spine, you know? When you have that feeling that someone is watching you, well, that used to happen to me often, but I would always shake my head and tell myself it was just my imagination, that it was just the shadows of the old streets of San Luis Potosí playing tricks on me. Elena always said that I was her right hand, that without me the store wouldn't be the same, and without blowing my own horn, I think she was right. I knew every piece, every craftsman, every story behind each object. It was as if the store were an extension of myself, you know? So, on a day like any other in that normally quiet city, something strange happened. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember it as if it were yesterday. It was drizzling outside, a fine rain very typical of San Luis Potosí at that time of year, and the store was emptier than usual. I was arranging some new pieces in the display case when I heard a strange noise coming from the back room. I thought it was just the wind seeping through the old buildings, but something told me it wasn't. I went to check and, well, that's when everything happened. It started to change when I arrived at the back room. I saw one of our oldest pieces, a ceramic vase intricately crafted in the traditional Potosí style, lying on the floor, but there was no open window, no place from where it could have fallen, and the strangest part, there wasn't a single broken piece on the floor. The vase was intact, as if someone had placed it there on purpose. At that moment, I felt a chill run down my spine, as if the very walls of the old shop were watching me. I grabbed the vase carefully, and I put it back on the shelf, but when I turned to leave, I swear I saw a shadow darting out of the corner of my eye. It was so quick that I thought I had imagined it, but that strange feeling didn't leave me all day. The heavy air in the store, mixed with the smell of wet earth coming from the street, seemed to bring a bad omen and was just the beginning of one of the events that would turn my life upside down right then and there. In the historic heart of San Luis Potosí, our craft store was a true hidden treasure in the historic center of San Luis Potosí. I felt proud of every little corner of that place. We sold traditional pieces from the region, each one telling a unique story about our rich Mexican culture. Sometimes I would just stand there admiring how it all had started and where we had come. Look at what was a small stall years ago. Now it occupied a considerable space in one of the most beautiful colonial mansions in the city, the pink quarry walls so typical of our architecture. The place now housed shelves that I myself helped to set up. They were always full of colorful ceramics, intricate textiles, and delicate sculptures. The smell of copal, that aromatic resin we use in traditional rituals, floated in the air. It mingled with the scent of old wood and fresh clay. It was as if the very spirit of Mexico were imbued in every corner of our store. I remember the early days of the business with such affection. Elena, my cousin, started selling some pieces in a little stall in the main square. Over time, demand grew and we managed to rent a small space in a gallery. Success continued and, finally, after years of hard work, we bought the big house where the store now operated. Each brick of that place held a bit of our history. The interior of the store was my playground, a charming labyrinth of colors and textures that I loved to organize. Right at the entrance, there was a counter displaying delicate silver jewelry, a specialty of Tasco. Further ahead, the woven blankets. The hand of Oaxaca covered an entire wall. I loved creating a vibrant mosaic with its geometric patterns. In one corner, the ritual masks from various regions of Mexico seemed to watch me with their hollow eyes. Sometimes, I confess, they gave me chills. In the center of the store, there was a large solid wood table that was my favorite. There, I displayed the most precious pieces, black clay vases from Oaxaca, multicolored life trees from Metepec, and the famous Talavera plates from Puebla. I would spend hours arranging it. table, making sure each piece was perfectly placed to catch the light coming through the tall windows. The back part of the store where that strange incident with the vase had occurred was dedicated to the local crafts of San Luis Potosí. It was my favorite section where they displayed the finely embroidered shawls, the woven straw figures, and the small onyx sculptures. I took special care of that section. It was my pride. As the business grew, our store became increasingly a landmark in the city. I loved seeing tourists from all over the world visiting, enchanted by the authenticity and quality of our pieces. Many returned years later bringing friends and family to see the place they described as a real piece of Mexico. That filled me with pride. Despite the success, Elena and I always maintained the essence of the business. We worked directly with local artisans, ensuring they received a fair price for their work. We organized workshops to promote the traditional techniques and help preserve the rich cultural heritage of our region. For me, the store was more than a business. It was an act of love for our Mexican culture. However, after that strange incident with the vase, I began to feel that there was something more in that space, something I couldn't explain, but that left me increasingly unsettled. It was as if the very walls held secrets that were about to be revealed. My routine in the store was a mix of charm and exhaustion. I always arrived very early, even before that the sun warmed the stones of the streets of San Luis Potosí. I opened the heavy wooden doors, letting the fresh morning air in and driving away the smell of incense and clay that permeated the place. It was an almost sacred moment for me, just me in the shop before the hustle and bustle of the city began. I spent the first hours organizing the new pieces that arrived from the artisans. Each shawl, each vase, each clay figure had to be in the perfect place. I knew the customers' tastes as the palm of my hand, and I knew exactly where to place each thing to draw more attention. Sometimes I surprised myself talking to the pieces as if they were old friends. Strange, right? But that's how I felt connected with everything there. The movement started to pick up around 10 in the morning. Tourists, collectors, locals. It was a constant procession of curious faces and amazed eyes. I loved telling the stories behind each piece, explaining the techniques used, talking about the artisans. It was as if I were a guardian of those traditions. Each sale was more than a transaction. It was passing a piece of the soul of Mexico, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. The days could be long and tiring sometimes. I barely had time for lunch, quickly eating a taco or a torta at the counter, always keeping an eye on the door, and on weekends, those were the toughest. The store would get crowded and I would be running around, attending to everyone, solving problems, packing things. The worst part was when I had to staying late. Elena trusted me to do the cash register closing and organize the inventory. Many times I found myself alone in the store long after the sun had set. The shadows grew, making the corners darker, and that silence was spine-chilling. I turned on the radio just to have some background noise, but even then the feeling of being watched didn't go away. I remember one particular night, a few weeks after that incident with the vase. I was taking inventory, counting the pieces back there in the back of the store. Suddenly, I heard a noise of something falling in the main area. My heart almost jumped out of my mouth. I went to see what it was, trembling from head to toe. I didn't find anything out of place, but I swear I felt a cold breath on my neck. After that day, I started to rush my night work. I did everything as quickly as possible so I wouldn't be alone in the store after dark, but it didn't always work. Sometimes the orders piled up or I had to resolve some urgent paperwork in those moments when I felt like the walls of the store were closing in around me. The worst part is that I couldn't tell anyone who would believe me. Elena would think I was going crazy and the other employees would laugh at me. So I swallowed my fear and moved on, but every night alone in the store was a test of my sanity. I just didn't know that things were about to get much, much worse. It was a sunny Wednesday when I met Javier. He was a young craftsman, maybe around 25 years old, with an incredible talent for ceramics. I remember the day he walked into the store carrying a box full of breathtaking pieces. Her eyes shone with pride as she showed me each vase, each plate, each figure. And rightly so, his work was exceptional. Javier soon became one of our most reliable suppliers. Always punctual, always responsible. I loved our bi-weekly meetings. When they brought new creations, we would spend hours talking about techniques and designs, stories behind each piece. It was refreshing to see someone so young, so passionate about tradition, but everything changed that autumn afternoon. Javier arrived at the store as usual, but something was different. His eyes, normally lively and cheerful, seemed dull, distant. His hands, always steady when handling the pieces, trembled slightly. I tried to make small talk with him to ask if everything was okay, but he only responded with monosyllables, avoiding my gaze. While they unpacked the new pieces, I noticed that Javier seemed distracted. Staying late. Elena trusted me to do the cash register closing